Okay, so now we have very little time, but we'll go with the boring part now. So introduction was a kind of comprehensive thing. When you see the course plan, it has brain and psychology and other stuff also. But in later classes, we'll also be discussing about some of the specific parts, how memory works, how perception, visual perception works. And we also need to have some idea of brain, and because that plays an important role. So I don't want to get into details of brain so much, but a cursory look how brain works, what are the parts, and that's all. So actually I had prepared a historical part also, that brain, before Copernicus and Galileo, nice guy, there was a theory called the earth is the center and everything moves around it, and people believed in that. Before the brain was discovered, I would say discovered because people always thought that the knowledge comes from some mysterious thing. Plato had an idea called, for all objects there is a perfect object somewhere, and what you see is just the copy of it. So it was an idealism, or then a lot of other things. Aristotle came that he said that no, the treeness is there in the tree itself. So people did not actually go talking about brain. They were mostly talking about knowledge, soul, mind. But there was a group of people that time also, even in 1000 year BC also, who actually were talking about brain. So in South America, 10,000 years back, they have found some skulls where they have made holes. And the idea basically was that when people go mad or something, or some problem, there is a spirit which has gone into his skull or head. So break it, the spirit will go out. So a very preliminary idea of something that our mental unconsciousness or consciousness depends on something called head, inside head. And because people knew that if you hit someone on head, they become unconscious or they stop speaking or something happens. So people started making connection with all these things. We also have some idea of clinical cases. People actually did clinical parts, 1600 BC also. There are some evidence. So I'll just go fast with this. This Alcmaeon of Croton believed that there is a site of sensation which is brain. People had a lot of different views. The heart as the organ of thinking, of perception and feelings. Brain could cool the passion of heart. So people always had different ideas. We still have. Don't listen to your brain, listen to your heart. When it comes to your girlfriend. When it comes to your wife, listen to your head. There was this particular theory, they call it doctrine, called ventricular pneumatic doctrine. Actually, the idea basically was that brain has 3 hollows, ventricles, and it has liquids. So people knew it. And what they did actually was, they believed that different ventricles serve different purpose. So this is old story, 1000 years old. Galen's theory was also very important, the same ventricular thing, ventricle seat of the mind. Actually, they actually said that soul could not be localized, but mind could be. First ventricle, the common sense. Second was reason, thinking and wisdom. Third was memory. So again, the idea of brain was evolving, but actually they didn't know about that. They actually are talking about brain. In neuroscience, when the Renaissance came, many people played role. Actually, they say that Da Vinci did a lot of anatomical designs. So this inspired people to actually draw things by looking at objects. There was this guy called Andreas Vesalius. He lived in a house where he had stacked dead bodies, and he used to sleep with them because he was so passionate about cutting bodies and then taking out organs and then drawing them. So nights also he had all these, he didn't mind. I don't know how he died. Then there was this idea of electricity which came in. Galileo came with this idea of that you can zoom in and then start looking at objects. Descartes also came up with this idea of pineal gland. He made a distinction between mind and matter. A lot of things were happening during this period. Then there was this very famous argument by people and theory that animal spirits force us to do a lot of stuff. Again, the force is that which was playing role. I'll skip these parts. Then came the Franz Joseph Gall in 1806, and he came up with the theory of which is called phrenology. So he divided the brain into 27 parts, and he said that all these parts actually play an important role in that particular function. So a small part will be language, small part will be emotion, something like that. And there were people, and there were doctors like phrenologists, and you have problem, go to those phrenologists and they will touch your head and they will see where there is a bump. And if there is a bump, they will say that, okay, this part of your brain has a problem. They even devised that by looking at the size of the skull or shape of your face, you can decide what kind of person you are, personality. Shape of your skull decided whether you are intelligent, creative or not. Anyway, so a lot of things happened in between. You can just go through, these are historical parts. Then came this Paul Broca. Now Broca was very important because he encountered a patient who could not speak, and this person died. So what he did, he went to this guy and said that, can I take his brain? And his family said, okay, take it. So he took his brain and then he cuts open it and then finds that there's a part of his brain which has a stroke, and that's the part. And we now know for sure that this is the part which is called the Broca area now, it's called. It is important for your language faculties. If you have stroke in that part of your brain, you will stop producing sounds. You will produce sounds, but they will be meaningless. So language production is dependent on Broca's area. So this guy came and he made a very important discovery. And then there were some more people, they found neurons. So actually the brain is not just parts, it has connections, which is called neurons. Then the last step which was important was this 1909 Brodmann. So now also brain is divided into 52 parts called Brodmann area, BA. And each part has special function. Okay. Now this is where I actually start. The history part I don't like much. So, all of us have brain. Who does not have? Anyone who claims I don't have brain? Huh? Just now use? Who does not use it? Yeah, probably. One general distinction. All of us have brain, and the brain is divided into two parts. Left hemisphere and right hemisphere. Left hemisphere controls right part of your body. Right hemisphere controls left part of your body. And they are connected with something called corpus callosum. Interestingly, there is this, when you look at an image, suppose I show you a picture of a tree, and you look at the picture, the research says that you get most of your data processed in your right side of the brain, because that is important for visual processing, and the name comes from the right side, left side, and then it is integrated. We don't know where this integration takes place, but a lot of data integration happens. This is a general understanding that your left side of the brain is more, logical, and the right side is more creative. Anyone who are right-handed people and left-handed people? Okay, so again, this is I won't say myth, but the idea is that those who are left-handed, their left hand is controlled by the right side of the brain, and that's why they are creative. In some sense it's okay, but there are other things also. Another one. The brain is divided into four major parts. Frontal lobe. Animals, especially monkeys, do not have this much of frontal lobe. Frontal lobe developed only after humans came, because this is important for calculations, reasoning, anticipation, a lot of other things that humans do. So intelligence is the frontal part. Animals do not have this. That's why they have just this much. This is a later part of evolution. And since we have this frontal part, we are intelligent. This is temporal lobe, which does a lot of survival instincts. Most of the senses are processed there. Parietal lobe, it also has the motor area. Occipital lobe, which processes your visual information. So all the visual, this is very interesting that your eyes are here and your data goes all the way to the back of your mind. Doesn't make sense, but probably we'll come across some reason for it also. This is a summary of kind that which part actually processes what part of your brain. And parts of brain are connected with neurons. They say that there are billions of neurons. But it's not that neurons that make the difference. It's the connections between these neurons. And when these connections happen, you have cognition. Some kind of manifestation, we do not know. I'll show you a video.
What do we know about the inner world?
So yeah, all this I have said. I have two videos and I'll finish the brain part in some sense, okay? Because these people say better with, wow.
What do we know about the inner workings of the human mind? Surely everything that humans do, from designing skyscrapers to composing symphonies, is not the product of simple cellular interactions. And yet it might be. Because everything that humans do, or think, or feel, is a result of these basic units of brain structure, the neurons. The human brain contains more than 100 billion neurons. Just like a single ant could never build an anthill, a single neuron can't think or feel or remember. A neuron's power is a result of its connections to other neurons. Each neuron is connected to as many as 1,000 of its neighbors. These trillions of connections provide the playing field upon which the complex activity of the brain takes place. Each neuron can turn its neighbors on or off depending on the signal it sends. And the resulting stable patterns of neuron firing represents memories and images and thoughts. We don't yet understand the relationship between neural activity and mental experience. We don't know what the precise pattern of memory or an image or a thought looks like. We don't yet know how to read the cerebral code of the neurons, but progress is being made.
Okay, so it's not about the number of neurons, it's about the patterns that neurons create. There is a video which actually shows the actual neuron connections being made. So actually I don't know how they took it, but it's for inspiring people or something. But whenever you have a thought, there is a new connection making and then things happening. Okay, so this video shows a lot of different kinds of things. If you smoke and then you leave smoking, what actually happens? So your connection gets pruned. There is something called pruning. And that was an original video or picture taken from the connections happening. It's an interesting thing. Neurons create the whole world that we have. Now this is the part which is important for us, that how do we understand them? We have seen that people assume that brain is nothing but hollow. Then people started believing that there is a spirit which is going on inside the brain. Then there is neuron, a lot of things. But actually, how do you understand it? I cannot look into your brain. I cannot cut open your brain and say, oh, see, when you said word like hello, this is where the brain, something is happening. You can't do that. It's not unethical, but it's not possible. You can't do that. So there are three different ways through which we get the information. One is the brain lesions. People who had different kinds of lesions, brain strokes. There was this guy called Feeney's gauge. When should we finish? Okay. So, okay, we'll continue it, but maybe you give me 5 minutes. The story of Feeney's gauge is very important because this guy was very nice guy. When he looked at women, he just said hello. When he looked at men, he said hello. And he had a wife, he had children, a nice family guy. But he worked in a railroad company which actually blasted sites, and railroad were created. So he was working as a laborer. One day there was a dynamite blast, and then what happened was that there was this rod which just went through his this throat and then came out of his head. His actual head is still kept. So this thing went up and then his left eye was gone. and he was conscious. So he just removed it, and then they did not have anything else, so they had bullock carts. He sat on the bullock cart and went to a doctor, and the doctor was new and he didn't know what to do with this thing. This fellow is carrying his part of the brain and says that, oh, see what happened. And the doctor said, what should we do? Should we just put it back? The doctor didn't know what to do. So this guy, he did something and he was sent back to the home. He did something with his eyes. But what actually happened was that he was perfectly fine. There was sometime something happened. And after 2 months or something, he was a nice guy. After 2 months, he used to come out of his house and start yelling at people. Hey, you! I'll kill you. I'll do this. I'll do that. And then people didn't realize that his whole nature, how did it change? He was able to speak, he was able to calculate, he was able to do everything that an intelligent and nice man does. But his social skills were gone. And what they found was, now there are still some studies based on this idea, that when this thing passed through his head, we have two parts. One is the frontal lobe. Frontal lobe is the intelligent part or reasoning part. So suppose I look at my, my enemy, and I want to hit him. What is stopping me? My frontal brain, my frontal part, which says that this is not nice to hit people right in front of, so many people. Take him backside and then give him slaps. But this feeling of hitting comes from a below part which is called amygdala, which is the emotional part or survival part. So all our urges to go to toilet, why do we go to toilet? We need to do it, but this is perfectly fine place. I can do it here. Why not? Because the frontal brain says that no, don't do it here. It's not good. Go to toilet, lock the door, and then. So the point is that your inner brain, which is very initial part of your evolution, has all these urges, and then it allows you to keep doing it. But your frontal brain comes and stops. Don't do it, don't do it, don't do it. That's why reasoning comes and morality and all those things come from the stopping. And this guy, so there is a connection between this amygdala and the frontal part, which was broken. It was a small part, but when this thing went through, it cut this part. And so what he lost was the shame. So social things that we stop or we don't do it in public, he didn't know about it. So actually the Finis Gage story is a very inspiring story, that how the brain injury can actually suggest that your social behavior is also coming from the very interaction between your previous brain or the old brain and the new brain. So new brain is the frontal part and lower brain is the survival part, which is amygdala. We'll continue it. So it's already 5 minutes late. Next time I didn't know much about the timing part, so sorry. Next time I'll cut it better so that we finish it in 1 hour. So thank you very much, and I hope to see you next week also.